living la vida low carb. This show is changing lives. We talking about your diet, trying to get you feeling right. Cut up them avocados, fry some eggs, time to explore the longest running health podcast, hosted by Jimmy Moore. Time to give up the crappy garbage, we're getting into ketosis. Every day is a new step to your goal, yeah, you're getting closer. Motivated and focused, don't stop, just go. Time to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
So today, you guys, I have another brand new study to share with you. There's always studies coming out, not always ones necessarily specifically related to low-carb diets or ketogenic diets, but a lot of times, yes, both pro and con. Well, today has nothing to do with keto, but it was so interesting, I just had to bring it to you. As always, I do these videos. You get the first dibs at watching them live over on my Instagram page, Jimmy Makes Science Simple. Go follow me over there, and you can stay up to date with all the latest studies that I go over. And yeah, here we go. So this one is from a journal called Scientific Reports. It was published in the November 2021 issue of that journal. The title of the paper, Chewing Increases Postprandial Diet-Induced Thermogenesis. And don't worry if you don't know what some of those words mean, I will explain. That's what we do on Jimmy Makes Science Simple. But it is available. If you will look up that title, you can find that in a web search. So go look up Chewing Increases Postprandial Diet-Induced Thermogenesis. The researchers Yuka Hamada and Naoki Hayashi, they are from the Department of Nutrition and Metabolism. They also work with the NIH and Nutrition, as well as the Biomedical Innovation, Health and Nutrition, and they are based out of, I'm trying to see, oh, here it is, Tokyo Institute of Technology. So that's where they are, in Japan. All right. Slow eating, which involves chewing food slowly and thoroughly, is an effective strategy for controlling appetite in order to avoid being overweight or obese. That's kind of the basis by which they start their study. Slow eating also has the effect of increasing postprandial, remember that means after eating, energy expenditure, something they call diet-induced thermogenesis. It is still unclear whether this is due to the oral stimuli, meaning the chewing, that is the duration of tasting the food in the mouth and the duration of the chewing. So it's unclear whether it's savoring the food and enjoying it, or if it's the act of chewing and the mechanics of breaking down the food so that it can be digested. So to investigate the effects of oral stimuli on this diet-induced thermogenesis, they looked at 11 healthy, normal weight males. They conducted a randomized crossover study comprising 3 trials. So to remind you, a crossover study is where they put a certain number of people on one wing of the study, then they wash it out, then they cross over to another wing of the study while the ones that were on the other wing cross over to the ones that the originals were on. So the different phases that they crossed over into was, number 1, drinking liquid food normally. Number 2, drinking liquid food after tasting. And then number 3, adding chewing while they're tasting. Oral stimuli, for example, the duration of tasting liquid food in the mouth and the duration of chewing, significantly increase the diet-induced thermogenesis after drinking liquid food. Why is that important? It means it's digested better. It means it's getting absorbed. The nutrients are getting absorbed better. And you're basically able to not let that food just linger in the body. It's actually being utilized and burned up. This result demonstrates that the increase in the diet-induced thermogenesis is directly tied to the oral stimuli, the chewing, rather than the influence of the food bolus. So it's not so much how much you eat, it's how much you are able to savor. And I would argue that if you sit there and savor and chew and really kind of let food become liquid in your mouth before you swallow, I would argue you can't eat as much. And so maybe indirectly what they're finding out is people swallow food too whole, and then by the time they get to more food, by the time they would get full, they're way past full. And maybe that's why people gain weight. Increased diet-induced thermogenesis that is induced by chewing and taste stimuli may help to prevent, this is their hypothesis, help prevent overweight and obesity. The only problem I have with this hypothesis is it's all about caloric intake. It's all about total energy intake. There is no mention whatsoever of food quality, how much of foods that are not really foods. Now, if they did it just with real whole foods, I would have more respect for it, I suppose. But we don't know because they didn't differentiate that in the study. A century ago, Horace Fletcher, 1849 to 1919, he was nicknamed the Great Masticator. Those of you that don't know that word mastication, that means chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing to make sure it's well digested. He found that the strategy of chewing food thoroughly could prevent weight gain. We've known this a century ago. He reported his strategy worldwide. Many subsequent studies have indicated that eating slower, that's what we have in our culture. Oh, you've got to slow down your eating. They think slowing down will make you chew more, and thus they think they've accomplished the same thing. But people can eat slower and still swallow whole. You can eat a whole lot slower. I used to get chastised when I was younger by my parents. You're swallowing your food way too soon. And it was just, I don't know what makes people do that, but some people have that propensity. Slow eating, which indicates chewing food slowly and thoroughly, is an effective strategy for preventing overweight and obesity, with eating speed being associated with the body composition and the shape. This has been attributed to overeating resulted from rapid eating. Helping those people who feel the need to rush their food, I think, is a great strategy. And maybe this study will provide some evidence that it is a great strategy. Slow eating has also had the effect of increasing diet-induced thermogenesis, what they call DIT. As we have reported previously, DIT, which is also called the thermic effect or specific dynamic action of food consumption, can be defined as the increase in the energy expenditure above basal fasting levels associated with digestion, absorption, transport, metabolism, and the storage of food. This factor is considered to represent an increase in your metabolism, in particular brown adipose tissue induced by the increase in histamine secretion accompanying the taste stimulation and chewing for a longer period of time. So they're trying to make the argument, chew your food longer, savor the food, and you can prevent obesity. It's an interesting hypothesis because all the obsession about calories in, calories out, all the obsession about, oh, you want to make sure you exercise enough, you want to make sure you eat right, and lower your fat. Could it be all along none of those things were true? Not that exercise is not true. I think that could be helpful, although very little about obesity, more about cardiovascular health and other things. But how cool would it be if we discover that had we just chewed and chewed and chewed and savored the food more, that we could have prevented the obesity epidemic from starting. Increased internal motility could be another contributing factor since the blood flow response increases after slow eating. Think about all the blood that has to go during digestion when you're eating fast and you're eating more whole, and then the breaking down and the creation of more juices to try to break down. Then if you don't have enough stomach acid, which we know that most people don't, upwards of 9 out of 10 people don't produce enough stomach acid. And so if you're eating big whole chunks of food and it's going into a belly with very little stomach acid, and then it starts to get backed up, and then it has to go somewhere. It has to be dealt with. If we could deal with it up here and chew and chew and chew and chew and chew until it's as liquefied as possible before we swallow, look at all the processes that you have to bypass, that you help your body out. There could be something to this theory. However, previous investigations of the influence on chewing or of chewing on DIT have been confounded by the size of the food bolus that's entering the digestive tract. That's what they've looked at before. The effects of oral stimuli, the duration of tasting the food in the mouth, along with the duration of chewing on this DIT, remember diet-induced thermogenesis, have not been reported previously. It is important to examine the effects of these oral stimuli on DIT in order to clarify the effects of slow eating as one of the strategies for preventing overweight and obesity. We hypothesize that these oral stimuli increasing the DIT based on our previous findings, that slow eating increased it. So they wanted to perform 3 trials in this one study. Drinking liquid food normally. So basically they have liquid protein shake or whatever it is, and they drink it. I'm sure it had a mix of all the macronutrients. 2, drinking the liquid food after they taste it. So they get a little bit of the taste on the mouth, and then they drink it. So they were able to get the flavor and everything and see what that does. And the most interesting one to me is the third wing of this study.
A lot of people ask me, Jimmy, how do you get such good deep sleep? Well, there's a lot of things that I do, but one of the newest things that I recently added is this upgraded magnesium from a company called Upgraded Formulas. Go to their website, upgradedformulas.com, and you can learn all about this nano technology that they use for this particular mineral of magnesium. Again, it's called Upgraded Magnesium, and it's got all the different forms of magnesium in it using the nanotechnology, so it gets absorbed a lot better. Guys, I have seen my deep sleep improve by as much as 30 to 40% simply by adding in this product along with sunshine exposure, darkness in the room, cooler temperature, all of the things that I always have done. So again, upgradedformulas.com is the website. Go check them out.
They're drinking, but while they're drinking this liquid diet, they're chewing in the process. Now, it seems weird, chewing liquid. You know, if you're sitting there drinking and then it's in your mouth and you're just chewing, kind of weird, right? But they wanted to know if adding chewing while tasting would impact it at all. So that's interesting. We'll see if it's interesting. So the methods were, they took 11 healthy, normal weight males with an average age of 23. They were 176 centimeters tall, body mass index of 21.9, so relatively lean. The inclusion criteria for the study was they had to be male, they had to be 18 to 30 years old, they had to have a BMI between 18 and 25, they had to be a non-smoker, no chronic or acute diseases, no dental problems, do not currently take medications, and don't have any food allergies. Those were the criteria. So they were specifically looking for a population of people, only 11, and it's all male. So take that for what it's worth. But they wanted basically healthy people. They didn't want to see people that were already kind of showing signs of brokenness. They want to say, in a healthy person, this is what happens. This study was conducted according to the guidelines laid down in the Declaration of Helsinki. It was approved by the Ethics Committee of Tokyo Institute of Technology in Japan. Each subject provided written informed consent to participate. So what was the protocol? The study had a randomized crossover design. The subjects completed 3 trials on 3 different days, with consecutive trial separated by more than 3 days. In other words, they washed out for 3+ days before they went to the next crossover study. The subjects arrived at the lab at the exact same time between 8:30 and 10 a.m. after having abstained from eating, abstained from consuming caffeinated or alcoholic beverages, and they did not do intense exercise since dinner on the previous night. Again, they're looking for no confounding variables in the study. They had fasted for more than 10 hours each, usually the overnight sleeping fast. Each subject was seated on a chair in a quiet room in which the temperature and humidity were controlled. After allowing the subjects to adjust to the experimental setup for 20 minutes, baseline data of gas exchange variables and circulation were recorded while resting for 20 minutes. The subjects completed a 100 Visual Analog Scale questionnaire to assess their hunger and their fullness before drinking the test drink. A 200 milliliter cocoa flavored drink was divided into 10 20 milliliter cups. After performing baseline measurements, the subject swallowed the 10 20 milliliter test drinks over a 5-minute experimental period in 3 ways. In the control group, the subjects swallowed 1 test drink every 30 seconds. So they're like, all right, dudes, all right, guys, they're young guys, so they're probably used to doing shots. So, all right, guys, you got 20 milliliters down. All right, that was fun. When's the next one? 30 seconds? Okay, is it 29, 30? Okay, and then they down. And so that was the control group. They're just straight up drinking it. And they did it within 30-second intervals. So if they had 20 of them, it means by 10 minutes, they finished all 200 milliliters. So that's kind of fun. In the long duration taste simulation, remember the second group, they had them taste it first before they drank it. Subjects kept the 20 milliliter test drink in their mouth for 30 seconds without chewing. So not only do they put it in their mouth, they have to sit there and hold it in their mouth for 30 seconds. And so they're holding it in their mouth so that their mouth and their tongue and all the taste receptors in their mouth get the full brunt of what that cocoa flavored potion stuff they had them drink tasted like. They wanted to see, is taste going to be a thing? And they had to do that with all 20. So can you imagine 10 minutes in a row of basically a little shot glass of 20 milliliters, for 30 seconds, and then swallow, and then grab the next one, put it in, and hold it in the mouth. That had to be the most uncomfortable one. Maybe. We're going to find out in a second which one, if that one or the next one was most uncomfortable, but holding it in their mouth. And the whole point was let them thoroughly taste. I wonder after how many of those, because they have 20 or 10 of them. I wonder after how many, they have 10 of them, so that would be 5 minutes to finish it. Did I do that right? Yeah, 10 20 milliliter cups, so 5 minutes. So it's not quite as bad as I thought it was. 5 minutes. And so can you imagine drinking and then have to put the next one in your mouth or hold it? It'd be kind of weird for me. But all in the name of science. So they were trying to see if taste only impacted. Then the final group in the chewing stimulation trial, the subjects had to chew on the test drink, 20 milliliter, for 30 seconds at a frequency of once per second. So not only did they have to chew, they were instructed to chew 30 times. 30 times. Because it's once per second and they had to hold it in there 30 seconds. So drink, like, and then they had to swallow, go to the next one, and do it again. That last one would be the worst one. Because by the end, you're kind of going, oh my jaw, this chewing of liquid, like you don't normally chew. What would have been fun for them is if somehow they made it where it would be chewable, maybe make it like maybe a milkshake consistency. At least you'd be chewing something that has bite to it. Chewing liquid is no fun. But again, all in the name of science. So let's take a look at that test drink. What was it? The subjects consumed the exact same 200 milliliter cocoa flavored drink. So it's called Calorie Mate Can from Otsuka, Japan. It has 200 calories, protein 7.6 grams, fat 4.4 grams, and listen to this, carbohydrate 31 grams. So they put a crap load of sugar into this stuff. That was the test drink in all of the trials. The temperature of the test drink was measured by an infrared thermometer. The test drink was at a controlled temp of 7.4 degrees Celsius. Alexa, what is 7.4 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit?
7.4 degrees Celsius is 45.32 degrees
So
Fahrenheit.
it was pretty chilly, cold. I wonder if any of them got brain freeze while they were like having it in their mouth, holding it, or having it in their mouth in the third group and chewing it. I wonder any of them felt brain freeze from like 45-degree temperature cocoa drink. Hunger and fullness. Subjects scored their hunger and fullness on a scale before the test drink. The subjects marked a tick on the line to indicate their feeling, with the score corresponding to the distance in milliliters from the left starting point of the line to the tick. The left and right ends of the scale were labeled not at all and extremely, respectively. So they wanted to see, I turned other people's ALEXA on. Sorry about that, but it's a nice little thing to have in real time while I'm doing these readings. So thank you for indulging me on that. Gas exchange variables and DIT, oxygen intake or uptake, carbon dioxide output and respiratory exchange were measured using a gas analyzer on a breath-by-breath basis before and after the test drink. The average data every 15 minutes and the last 15 minutes of the resting baseline were used for the analysis. Energy expenditure at resting baseline and after the test drink was calculated using the abbreviated Weir equation, which they list here in the study. That's the Weir equation right there. DIT was calculated from the postprandial increment, we don't want excrement in this, increments in energy expenditure above the resting baseline. Accumulation for DIT over 90 minutes was calculated under the curve using trapezoidal rule. A lot of science gobbledygook, but you get the idea. Alrighty. So the heart rate and the mean blood velocities and vessel diameters of the celiac artery and superior mesenteric artery were also measured. I think they're just trying to say we did our homework on making sure we're measuring exactly what's happening in these patients as they're doing different parts of the trial. They use some Doppler frequency technology. I'm trying to skip ahead because that's a little in the weeds there. All right, statistical analysis. The sample size was estimated using this thing called G-Power 3.1, using the data from a previous study that investigated the effects of the number of chews and meal duration on DIT to detect changing of DIT with a power of 80% and an alpha level of 5%. A sample size of more than 6 subjects were required, and they had 11 in this study. All statistical analyses were performed with SPSS out of Japan. Okay, let's get to the results. Enough of the mathematics of the study. Let's get into what they actually found. In the results, hunger and fullness at the resting baseline, the hunger and fullness scores did not differ greatly among the trials. Hunger, fullness, and in the control group were all basically the same in all three, which you kind of would expect. Going into it, you would hope that these subjects, before they start the study, would be in the same kind of state when it comes to hunger and fullness. There was no difference among the trials, even after the intake of hunger and fullness. You're drinking 200 calories in 10 different sippy cups, little shot glass sippy cups. That's not really going to make you full. As long as you had a moderate amount of hunger beforehand and you drink that, I guess it's going to help with that. So not surprising there. They look at some of the gas exchange and the substrate oxidation and the splanchnic circulation. I don't want to bore you with some of that because that's kind of boring, to be honest. So they did accumulate various variables over the 90 minutes after drinking the test drink. So yes, they drank the test drink, but they didn't just let them go after that. They wanted to see what happened up to 90 minutes after. So what they did was they looked at the DIT that accumulated over the 90 minutes after swallowing the test drink. It was significantly greater in those who chewed, that third category, than in the control group and in the taste group. The accumulated substrate oxidation for protein, fat, and carbs did not differ among the three groups, so that's interesting.
Did you go keto and thought you had to give up wine? Well, let me introduce you to Dry Farm Wines. It is the world's first sugar-free alcohol that is lower than your typical wines, organic, made at local farms that do it the right way. Most of the wines that you buy are from 3 really big companies, loaded with additives and preservatives, so many dozens of those kinds of things. You don't want all that junk in your wine. So go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and they will ship you these wines. And just because you listen to this podcast, Dry Farm Wines is going to give you a bottle in your first order for just 1 cent. Go to dryfarmwines.com/Jimmy and you will get your bottle of wine for just 1 singular penny. Go check them out. Dry Farm Wines, you guys. It's wine o'clock somewhere.
So that's what happened. They saw better DIT when it came to the chewing. So obviously there was something with the chewing mechanism that made this DIT more efficient and work. And it begs the question, okay, if we're just straight up eating and drinking food, if we're just tasting the food but not chewing it, and yet adding the action of chewing it is going to provide even more benefits, then it's an argument for maybe we should be chewing more, which seems kind of duh. But I wonder if you could get the message out there to people who don't chew their food well. Maybe this is a preventative measure, and maybe someone currently with obesity, although we don't know from this study, because the 11 subjects in this particular study, while yes, it's a randomized trial, all 11 are 23 years old on average, all male, all healthy. None of them smoke or drink. None of them have any chronic diseases to speak of. I wonder if this is merely a preventative measure, or could it be implemented with people who already have obesity, already have some other issues going on? We don't know because they didn't test that. So in the discussion, let's take a look at that. DIT refers to the increased energy production after consuming a meal. It was found to increase with the duration of each taste stimulation and the duration of the chewing. This result, supporting our hypothesis, demonstrates that oral stimuli, the duration of tasting the food in the mouth, and the duration of chewing increased DIT rather than representing the influence of the food bolus. So it increased the duration of each taste stimulation, and with the duration of chewing, supplies blood to the liver, the stomach, abdominal, esophagus, spleen, and the superior halves of the duodenum and the pancreas. And so the motility of the upper gastrointestinal tract was increased simply by adding in the elements of taste, and then in the third group with chewing. This notion is consistent with our previous report of an increase in the CABF associated solely with tasting and chewing food. So they've done previous research looking at this. This is the first one where they kind of broke it off into the 3 categories. In this study, we used a beverage as the stimulus in order to avoid the influence of the food bolus. So in other words, it was liquid by design, although I wonder, could they have taken like a steak and liquefied it in like a blender? It would be gross, of course, but then you would have the additional input of a higher fat and protein content with very little carbohydrate. I wonder if it would have changed anything about this study. That's just my brain working. Because this was a very sugary drink with very little protein and fat in it as a totality of the calories. How could they have made this better? Of course, they could have used a protein shake and gotten higher fat and protein and very minimal carbohydrate, something like a keto chow shake or something like that. I wish they would have done the study at least comparing those things as well, that the kind of shake also mattered, the kind of drink also mattered. We have never controlled for the effect of food bolus, so that's why they used the drink. By using beverages, we succeeded in eliminating this effect of the food that we had in our previous study compared to the present study. The present study provides novel insight into the mechanism underlying the increase in DIT induced by taste and chewing. We also provided evidence that the oral stimuli provided by the combination of taste and chewing are important to increasing DIT. In other words, when you're chewing, you're getting not just the chewing mechanism, but also the taste. Remember, the second group, all they did was have the cocoa solution in their mouth, but they didn't chew. So they could taste it, but they weren't getting that stimulation. In the third one, not only are you tasting it, but you're getting this moving around of the liquid in your mouth that with that chewing action. So you're getting a more intense tasting of it along with the chewing of it. Kind of interesting. We have provided evidence that the oral stimuli provided by the combination of taste and chewing are important to this increase in the DIT. Thus, slow eating, which involves chewing food slowly and thoroughly, can increase DIT. Remember, that's diet-induced thermogenesis, and may be an effective strategy for preventing overweight and obesity. I still argue that the kind of food can matter. I think if we just put the whole onus of obesity, overweight and obesity just on not chewing your food enough, I think that's doing a great disservice to the kinds of foods that you eat and the hormonal impact of those foods that you eat. Those things still matter. It's not just about how much chewing you do. But this is a great additional element that if you eat a carnivore or a keto or a real foods-based diet now, they're making the argument that make sure you chew enough. And I know functional nutritional therapy practitioners, they teach this to their clients all the time. I've had many interviews with different NTPs over the years, and all of them say, yeah, we're not digesting our foods well enough. And the reason why is we're swallowing too whole. And look, I'm the first one to admit that I do that. I sometimes will have food in the mouth and I swallow way too soon. You got to chew and chew and chew and chew and chew to make sure it's thoroughly liquefied as much as you can before you swallow. And they say that would be an obesity deterrent if you did that. I don't know how you make people do more of that unless you tell them to blend their food, which helps in the process of breaking it down. But you kind of need that chewing process, because when you do that, then the saliva comes out and different enzymes come out to break down food here in the mouth long before it starts going down through the duodenum and all the organs and everything and stomach that helps to break down the food. It's an interesting hypothesis, though. The increase in diet-induced thermogenesis induced by chewing is smaller after consuming solely liquid food than normal food. We have previously shown that chewing increases DIT by 6 calories and 10 calories over 90 minutes after eating a 100-calorie and 300-calorie blocky foods, respectively, and by 15 calories over 180 minutes after eating 621 calories of regular food, including pasta. Comparison with these previous results reveals that we obtained a smaller DIT by using a 200-calorie drink. Tasting increased DIT from 3.4 to 5.6 over 90 minutes, minimal. And adding chewing increased it to 7.4 calories over 90 minutes. Thus, the increase in DIT by chewing went from 1.8 to 4.0 over 90 minutes. The use of liquid reduces the chewing stimulation, resulting in a smaller DIT, which is consistent with the hypothesis. This reveals that not only oral stimuli, the tasting of the food and the duration of chewing, but also the size of the food can contribute. Now, looking at those numbers, it's so minimal. But look, minimal stacked on top of one another, on top of one another, on top of one another over time can add up. And so I guess that's the point here, is anything you can do that would add more calorie burning in the process of digesting your food is a good thing in their mind. So again, it comes back to the calories. I would argue walk on a slow treadmill while you're eating. If you're trying to burn a few more calories, why put all the onus on your poor jaw that has to chew and chew and chew? Now, that said, don't misunderstand me. Do chew your food. Number one, it's dangerous to swallow whole food, especially meats and things. I've done that before, where I accidentally swallowed some meat, like a steak, and it was big and it got stuck right here, and I for a moment got choked, and so I was able to get it out. But chew your food, I don't think is a bad recommendation. But the point here is, if it's just about a calorie increase, is that enough to prevent obesity? It's kind of a bold claim to say that's what's going to prevent overweight and obesity. I don't think so. But is it healthy for your digestion? You bet it is. You bet. So the conclusion in the study, oral stimuli will increase the diet-induced thermogenesis. We speculate that overweight and obesity may be avoided by simply chewing and tasting via this increase in the diet-induced thermogenesis. So earlier I said that this study was published in November 2021. That's when it was accepted. It was actually published December the 9th, 2021. Again, in the journal Scientific Reports. Let's get it there, right there. Scientific Reports. Chewing increases postprandial diet-induced thermogenesis. Yet another study, you guys, in the quest to find a cause for and cure for overweight and obesity. I feel like the more we do these kinds of studies, the more we learn of something new we could add in. And maybe you're eating a ketogenic diet, a carnivore diet. Maybe you're having real whole foods be the basis of your diet. If you're not, number one, start with that. Get that under control. That's something that you can control. Number two, if you're not adding in any movement, make sure you're getting in at least some walking. If you can, do some body weight exercises, lifting some weights, swinging a kettlebell, something like that. That's also going to help. But maybe slowing down, maybe allowing your body to digest and properly absorb the nutrients from the foods that you eat. It's hard for your body to grab those nutrients if you're sitting there basically inhaling your food. That was the phrase that was used. Oh, don't inhale your food, as if you would inhale it. It was weird. I've never heard of inhaling, but I guess that's what the vernacular was. And chew and chew and chew until it's liquefied so your body can do something with those nutrients. Everything is a part of the equation. I think the more you know, the better you can do, and the better choices you can make. That's it for this Jimmy Makes Science Simple. Thanks so much again for listening and watching. And yeah, you want to get these firsthand as soon as they come out. Go follow me over on Instagram at Jimmy Makes Science Simple, and you'll be the first ones to see this live. I don't really have a time that I do these. When I find a study and I need to do a Jimmy Makes Science Simple, I go live on that Instagram page. So thank you so much for being here today, and we'll be back again real soon with another study. Bye, guys.
Come to get inspiration from the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Hey, the livinglowcarbshow.com.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active, or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.
Tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but
It's breathable, baby. PlayTheMassGame.com.